You're going to really, really thoroughly enjoy this guy. He's got a great personality, super, super smart, and this is my favorite investment tool, my favorite topic, and I'm very blessed to know you, Eddie, and I'm thankful that I got to invest in one of your deals, and I know we're going to do a lot more. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you. So I'm from the Bahamas, and growing up, I had the opportunity where my family was in rental properties, right? So on my mom's side of the family, they owned some rentals. So as a kid, me and my cousin, we would go ahead and like be painting units. We would be turning units, like hauling out trash and stuff like that. So I kind of saw that, as a kid, like growing up. And it sucked at the time, but then, in retrospect, I'm like, okay, well, they did something right? They owned some rental properties. So fast forward, I moved to the States at 18 years old, once I finished high school, and I used to play tennis, and I ended up in Alabama because I played tennis at Stillman College, which is a small HBCU in Tuscaloosa. So I studied business administration and accounting, in college, and basically, I realized that I didn't really want to do that as a, career. So, basically I had an opportunity where I could learn more about real estate. So y'all ever saw like those 3-day events, like where it's like a 3-day event, they kind of teach you about real estate, wholesaling, fix and flip, buy and hold, like all within like 3 days. It's only so much that you can really take in, right? So that came at me, really quick, but like, I saw where it was a lot of testimonials and people, I saw it was working. So fortunately, I was able to meet one of my first mentors there, who's actually in the back of the room right now, Shanta Torbridge, shout out Shanta. She was the first mentor I had, and I was in Tuscaloosa at the time, and I was driving up, about maybe one to 2 times a week, just trying to learn about real estate, right? So, keep in mind, I'm a student athlete at this time, I'm working at Ross, and I'm also trying to graduate, but then I'm also like coming up like twice a week, to help with interning, right? I just knew like, it was tough at that time, but it would pay off eventually, right? So fast forward, I did that my junior and senior year, and then basically after that experience, I realized that, hey, this is like, real estate is something I really want to get into. So basically I had a decision to make, right? So it was either go the safe route, get your CPA, and just go that route, or like I have this 6-month window where I can just jump into real estate. So how people say, you burn your ships, that's kind of like what I did. I was like, okay, it's like the perfect time to do this. I'm 22 years old, what can kind of like go wrong? So I really just like jumped into it, y'all. So I started with wholesaling, and I was enjoying that, but I realized that, hey, when you don't sell a deal, guess what? You ain't making no money. So I don't know about y'all, but my bills don't stop, okay? Every single month, I got my rent, or a mortgage, or a car note you gotta pay. So I was like, okay, what's gonna happen if I don't sell this wholesale deal, right? Then I'm gonna be out of pocket that month. So then it was kind of like I was back to like square one. I was like, okay, this ain't really that much better than no job though. Like, what I'm saying? Like, so I was like, okay, I need to figure something else out. So I had another mentor, Denmark Properties. They took me in and they owned some rentals. And that's kind of like how I got into learning more about like how cash flow works, right? They did lease purchase and then also owned some single family homes. So actually the first deal I bought was actually from them, and they owned, I think it was maybe like 10 or 11 single family homes at the time and 1 duplex. And y'all can guess like which property I was most interested in. It was the duplex, right? So, and I was the one that didn't want to sell. So, we went, and negotiated and everything like that, but we was able to get a deal done. At the time, I don't have no job, so when I go to the bank and I ask for a loan, the first thing they're saying is, okay, what's your tax returns look like, right? Or how long have you been working at your, job? And when you come in the bank and you saying you are an entrepreneur, to them that's like a red flag. So, that wasn't going to work out for me for my first deal. So I had to get creative. So I did what's called seller financing. So put down a portion of the down payment, and then the rest the seller carried as a note. So that's how I got my first deal. So if we just talk about like 3 reasons I like apartments, right? So number 1, cash flow. So, that don't stop, right? It don't matter if you go on a vacation with your family, it don't matter if you get hurt and you can't like physically show up to your job, As long as you own rental properties, that cash flow is still going to come as long as you have a tenant in there that's willing to pay you, right? So amortization. So when you're owning rental properties, you're not the one physically coming out of your pocket paying down that debt, okay? The tenants are doing that for you, right? So that's another positive with it. Forced appreciation. So in my opinion, like multifamily properties, they lean more on the income approach. So on single family, well, from an appraisal standpoint, I don't know if we have any appraisers in the room. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so it's 3 approaches that's usually used to value properties. The income approach, the sales approach, and I think it's the cost approach. Okay, so basically, you know, with single family homes, they lean more on that sales approach. So you're looking at comparables of what properties are selling, you know, around you, right? With multifamily properties, you have a little bit more control in what I call forced appreciation, because you can kind of dictate to a degree what your property is valued at, depending on how much you can bump the net operating income on that property. And the net operating income is just the total revenue on the property minus your operating expenses, that's your NOI. And you divide that by what's called a capitalization rate, which is the rate of return someone is willing to pay for a like-in-kind deal, and you get a value. So, you know, from you bumping up rents, you know, $100 per unit, you know, you do that, you know, on a 40-unit complex, you know, that's added to that net operating income. So your value is actually increasing. So you're not just waiting on what happens in the market, you have some control over, you know, the value that your property is going to get, right? So economies of scale. So I like to look at every property as its own business, you know, and I encourage you guys to do the same thing, right? How much businesses y'all know have one customer? Anyone? Hands up if you, okay. So the only one I could really think of was like the US government, maybe like a weapons contractor, that's basically it. But like for me, like most businesses have multiple clients, right? So if you're looking at like a single family rental, and keep in mind, any real estate is better than no real estate, so I'm not just down on that, right? But what's gonna happen when that one person decides not to pay you rent? You literally go from 100% collected income to 0% income in any given month, right? So you go from your tenant paying the bills to now you having to come out of pocket paying your mortgage, right? Even if you go up to a duplex, right? Which is just one more door on that one property. If one person don't pay you, you have 50% of the revenue that, you know, that's allocated that you can use to at least pay some of the bills, right? Let's scale it up. What if you have a 4-unit apartment complex? If one person don't pay you, 75% of that revenue is still collected, and majority of the time, like all your bills are still going to be paid, and you may have a little bit more money in your pocket. Let's scale it up. If you have a 100-unit apartment complex, if 10 people ain't paying you, that's not even a blip in the radar, y'all. Like literally, like that's not, you know, you still doing, you know, good on the property. So that's just the point I'm trying to make. Like with scale, it's actually safer. Like when I started, I was like, okay, it's safer for me to buy a single family home, or it's safer for me to buy a duplex, right? That's not really the case. I mean, it's the easiest to get into, but when you're really talking about a sustainable business, I firmly believe that multifamily properties have that scale. And mailbox money, so you know, you already know what, we've already talked on that. So this is kind of like just my investment journey. So I started out wholesaling. First property I bought was that duplex I mentioned earlier. And I bought that one on seller finance. You know, the third property I bought was a 4-plex apartment complex. And keep in mind, like these properties, they ain't in Greystone, okay? They ain't in Mountain Grove, okay? I started where I could afford, okay? So for me, that was in the hood, okay? Just being straight up. So I have like properties in Fairfield, Smithfield, that one there, the 36 units in Woodlawn. And the nicest one now we have that we recently bought that Bobby and team are invested in is like on the outskirts of Centerpoint. So it's like in the Sun Valley area, Centerpoint, like really nice location. But I started out like where I could afford. Like my first wholesale deal was actually in Ensley, in the middle of the hood. And at the time I didn't know how to wholesale. So I was putting up bandit signs. And I had to come up with my pistol, putting up bandit signs. I was like, no one messing with me. And I'm going home with my mom. And you know, so that's just what it is. But I mean, you know, right now we have 90 units. But like, if you really want to, like, you know, if you really want to get, you know, somewhere in this business, you got to be willing to take sacrifices, right? Sometimes that's living below your means. Sometimes that's going in rougher areas. You know, sometimes that's just making sacrifices, but if you really want to get into it, sometimes you just got to work with the cards that you have, right? So for me, it was starting in the hood. All right, so this is like the new property we buying. This is 40 units, like in the Gardendale area. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see it's kind of like, different from like what we first started out at. But then I also didn't mention I own a property management company too. So back in 2020, in the middle of COVID, right, I had a situation where I had like 4 vacant units that we had gotten ready to rent, and we couldn't show units because the third-party management company that I was using at the time, their office was closed. So here I am as an owner, I'm like, okay, I need these units filled because I need to refinance on this property. So I ended up having to show units, which I don't mind doing. But that kind of was like the light bulb to me. I was like, okay, well, why am I paying a management fee if I'm the one showing units? So I was like, okay, I'm 25 years old. I was like, you know what, this will be the perfect time to start a management company. So I was like, okay, the things I learned on my duplex and my 4-unit deal where I was knocking on doors, asking people for rent, marketing units, I was like, okay, I can use these same concepts and probably bring in a property manager, pay them, and try to like grow a company. So right now, 2 years later, we have 5 employees. I have a property manager, I have 2 maintenance techs, and we have a resident manager, and then if you count me, it's 5, right? So that's basically it. So how I find profitable deals. So I don't know about y'all, but like it ain't really no magic way to really find deals. For me, it's kind of like the old school way. So when I first started like my journey, I would literally like just drive neighborhoods. So I would go on Google Maps, I would put in a zip code I like, I would map out on the InRoute app, and I would literally like just go street by street and drive properties. And I mean, it don't sound sexy, but it works, okay? That's how I found my deals. So it was literally, how can I get in touch with the owner? There go your owner right there. Now you can just ask them, okay, would you be interested in selling this property in the next 3 months to 5 years? Like that's kind of how I always phrase it, because if you ask someone, hey, do you want to sell your property right now? Like they just gonna be like, you know what, man, I don't really think so. I know me, I get them calls like at least once a week. But if you phrase it like, hey, would you be interested in selling your property in the next 3 months to 5 years? It's a little bit easier. They're like, maybe. Now you're foot in the door. So now you just need to keep following up with them. So, and then another thing you can do is send a letter to them in the mail. Or just, hey, my name is Eddie. I invest in multifamily apartments in the Birmingham area. I saw your property at X address. Would you be willing to sell this property in the next 3 months to 5 years? So I mean, that's the approach to use. And then being persistent. So I've literally had deals that I've saw. Case in point, the 48-unit deal we bought last year. I saw that deal first time in 2018. And I just kind of kept following up. Like, was relentless with it. And it just kind of happened that last year it was willing to sell. But if I just kind of like just dropped the mic, like right there, and then like that first time I reached out to him, we wouldn't have gotten the deal done. And then networking, so like what you guys are doing like right now, like so your network is your net worth, right? So you always want to be telling people what you do. I'm big on like social media, like it ain't about bragging, y'all. Like it's about like telling people, what you're involved in, because if no one knows what you're doing, how are they gonna help you? If you ain't telling people you invested in multifamily real estate and and you're excited about it and you just sharing your journey, how are people going to know to invest with you? How are they going to know to point you in the right direction, right? So I'm always big on that. Like, y'all, we got to get out of that habit of feeling like we bragging, like when we sharing our journey, right? Don't be afraid to go on social media and talk about that deal y'all just closed, right? Don't be afraid to talk about, hey, I'm spending this weekend looking at properties in Birmingham or whichever market y'all looking at. We got to get confident doing that, and you're going to see that. Eventually you're going to be able to either help people or the people are going to be able to help you. So you always have to like just communicate and tell people what you do. And I'm big on like networking. So, you can network, in Birmingham. Don't be afraid to go outside of Birmingham too. It may be an event in Florida where it's a multifamily event and there's hundreds of people going. Why not go to that? I know Bobby and them, they go with Elena Cardona and the 10X team in Florida, right? So they ain't afraid to like go out of their comfort zone and meet new people. Right? So, you just gotta be confident and get out your comfort zone. So what I look at when I'm looking at potential property. So First thing is like the rent comparison, right? So especially in this market today, you know, with interest rates going up, you want to make sure the deals that you're buying, because in my opinion, everything is at a premium right now. Like in my opinion, like you know, it don't matter if you're buying the deals that are 20% occupied or the deals that's 100% occupied. They ain't the prices they was 5 years ago. I don't know about y'all, but like price per door, I was buying when I first started in Birmingham, 10K a unit, 15K a unit, and like one of my buddies here that owns like maybe 200 units, he's not buying anything now because he's kind of like upset at what the prices looking like, right?
You wish you could get it at 15K a unit right now.
Yeah, no, that don't exist no more, so I hate to break it to y'all, but it's still, you know, good opportunities there. But, you know, we have to understand that you have to have a rent down, so you have to have a difference between what your current rents are and what the market rents can do, right? So I just was talking to Joseph about this. He was looking at a property, he was saying that it was like $450 rent. And he just was like, you know, I know that this property can go for at least $650, okay? So that's your rent disparity right there. So you want to make sure you're doing, you know, market analysis to make sure that it is some type of value add that you can do to the property, right? So some resources that you can use is, I really like apartments.com. If you have any broker relationships, like commercial broker relationships that have like CoStar access, you can ask them to do like a rent comparable analysis, you know, and just get an idea of like what properties are rented for in the area. Or you can also just go ahead and drive properties and ask the property managers. I think the most recent information is going to be like literally like just go into the property, because rent just changes, you know, rent can change like month by month or week by week. So, and then you want to know like, is the property turnkey or does it need any renovations? So when I first started, you know, I was big on just buying properties that was dilapidated or needed a lot of work, right? Soon I found out that, you know, you could still buy a property that's 100% occupied if you buy it at the right price and there's still opportunity to increase rent, you can still make a lot of profit. So don't think that, okay, for me to get a multifamily, I gotta buy, you know, a property that's 20% occupied, 30% occupied. You can literally start with a property that's 100% occupied, you buy it at the right price, you can still make a profit. So location, right? So like I said, for some people, they don't feel comfortable like investing in like a rougher area, and that's completely fine. You know, you just got to make sure that whatever area you're going into, you know, you're comfortable with it, right? So for me, I didn't really care, because it was like the difference between me having to go back and get my CPA and do QuickBooks all day for 20, 30 years, or me getting into real estate. So, I mean, some people may not be comfortable with like rougher areas, which is completely fine, but like, get in where you can get in. Like for me, it was like in areas like Fairfield, NZ, etc. But you know, I would say a good middle ground is like your B-class areas. So workforce places, like places that when people, you know, mention the name, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a nice area. You know, yeah, I live there, or I'll own a property there. So like those are like your B-class areas, right? They have like good median incomes, good school systems, you know, stuff like that. Like that's a really solid like base if it's gonna be your first deal and you don't want to get into like too much issues. So on and off market, right? So most of the deals that are going to be like better opportunities are going to be like off market. But in my opinion, like about 80 to 90% of deals are controlled by brokers, which is okay. That just means that you need to start developing relationships with brokers, right? When I first started, I was like, okay, every single deal has to be an off-market deal. That's not really the case. So you have to do both. Develop relationships with brokers, communicate with them, because they control the majority of the inventory in the market, and that's never going to change. But that 20 to 10%, that's where you come in, okay? That's where you do the cold calls. That's when you get direct to the owners. And those deals, you may close like 1 to 2 deals a year, but that's enough to change your life. I don't know about y'all, but I mean, just show of hands, do y'all think like a 30, 40, 50 unit apartment complex, just one of them a year can change your life? Like show of hands? Okay, I see one in the back. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, you know, if you're focusing on that and you know you get deals done that way too, you can still, you know, make good progress. So purchase price. So for me, like when I first started, like that was a big thing. I didn't want to pay too much for deals, but now it's like if you want to get in a good location, don't be afraid of the price you're purchasing at, but you have to be conscious of what are your returns like, not just for you, but for your investors. Because at the end of the day, most multifamily transactions are done as a team or a collaborative effort. So you have to make sure that the returns that are reflective on these deals, is enough to attract investors. All right, and then, number of vacancies. So, like I talked about it earlier, you don't really have to buy a really vacant property. You can go ahead and get something that's more stabilized. And actually, you'll get better debt on a property that's more stabilized too. So, And steps for success. So networking, network. Don't be afraid to share your journey with people. It's not bragging no more. We in 2022 right now, you have to utilize social media. It's free, right? Communicate to people. Tell people what you're doing. If you ain't big on social media, when you're going out to meet with friends, y'all going to the game, or y'all going to the bar or whatever like that, tell people what you got going on. Hey, I don't know if I told you, but I'm interested in investing in apartments, or I'm interested in investing in single-family homes, and this is why, right? Tax benefits, just cash flow. It's a hedge for inflation. You just start listing off these stuff, and it may not be something that it comes to fruition that one year, but you're planting that seed, and eventually you may be able to end up doing the deal with them, right? So partnerships with multifamily, like I said, majority of it is going to be you partnering with someone, okay? Seldom are you going to have a deal where it's just you, unless it's like a duplex or a 4-unit, or you just got a lot more money than me, okay? But to do just is totally fine. But if you're doing these deals frequent enough, it's going to come a time to where you either have more deals than money, or more money than deals. It's always like a seesaw. It ain't never really the same thing. So with that being said, you need to find people that you can collaborate with that bring something to the table that you need to get a deal done. And a multifamily transaction, that may look like someone that has a high net worth that can help sign on a loan with you. It may look like someone that can raise capital, attract investors. It may look like someone that has the time to manage the asset day to day. Whatever that is that you're lacking, you want to find some people that have that aspect that they can bring to the team so y'all can get a deal done. And then passion, so multifamily isn't like a get-rich-quick game. It's more like a get-rich-for-sure game. So you have to understand that it's not overnight. Everything you're doing right now, it's like building a house like brick by brick, right? You ain't just gonna wake up and the house is gonna be built. You have to lay that foundation. You gotta start acquiring properties. You gotta start educating, networking with people. But doing it 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you may be in a different financial situation than you are right now. So you just have to understand that you have to have something other than the money that's driving you. What's your why? We hear this all the time, right? It has to be something that's compelling you to do it, because if you in it just for the money, you're going to get really discouraged pretty quickly. So you have to find a reason why. And for me, is knowing that everything I'm doing right now is building on itself, right? No one can fire me from owning multifamily properties, okay? I can't lose that job, okay? It don't matter whatever happened, unless Elon Musk just creates something where we can live virtually. People are always going to need a place to stay, okay? Once we have people that need a place to stay, people are going to need to live in apartments, because not everyone can afford to have a home. As long as you have that demand, you're always in business, okay? The shop is always open. So it's we reinventing the wheel here. This is a tried and true business. It's been going on before I was born. Anyone in this room was born. It's going to be going on, once we off this earth. People always going to need a place to stay. So just understanding that and realizing that it's not, an overnight game, that's how you get further in it. And then invest in yourself. Don't be afraid of investing in mentorships. Don't be afraid of investing in education, right? You need that. That's how you limit your risk. If you're just going out and trying to do everything on your own, guess what? You're going to learn the hard way, okay? Whether that be in fix and flip, whether that be in multifamily, you're going to learn the hard way, right? So, for me, it started with, my first thing was working for free and getting interns, and getting an internship, because that's how I learned the real estate space. So it's just don't be afraid to, if you have time, don't be afraid to give that away for free, because it is a space. And then learn from hardships. So on my 36-unit deal, right, I bought that deal at 10K, 12K a unit, about $376K for a 36-unit apartment complex, right? 20% occupied, ton of work that needed to be done. And on this deal, we use a hard money loan on it, and what I thought was going to take a year-long project ended up being 2 years. When I thought I would only have to have one contractor, I ended up having to get 2. So it's just like, you know, if you're doing this thing long enough, you're going to run into like bumps in the road, but it's how you get through those bumps. When I hit that first bump, when I had to fire that contractor, guess what? Eddie was showing up on the job site every single day, okay? In that transition period. When we got the new contractor, I was there every single day. And like I learned from that experience. So it's just like when you hit those bumps in the road, you got to be willing to show up, right? So I mean, you got to learn from your mistakes. So for us on that project, for me showing up every day, I was able to keep that thing in budget. We was able to refinance it, and now we have long-term debt on it and be in a good place. You know, but when you hit those bumps in the road, you just have to know that you need to be able to show up and not be afraid and try to find answers to the problems that come up. All right, so yeah, so I'm sorry I was missing a few slides. I hope it was like some value. You know, I want to kind of just make this more interactive too. If there's any questions in here that y'all have for me or about multifamily investing in general, you know, this is the time to ask any questions that y'all have. Thank you.